Hari Om. Chapter 16. We have been told very clearly through the words of Krishna addressing Arjun and through Arjun addressing all of mankind, all of us. And so we are the privileged listeners, eavesdropping, so to say, eavesdropping on the conversation between Krishna and Arjun. We are indeed privileged because there are pearls of wisdom that Krishna is going to share only with Arjun. Why not with Duryodhan? We'll come to that. So, in the 16th chapter, 4th verse, and this whole chapter is about distinguishing between Daivi Sampat and Asuri Sampat. Why is it called Sampat, Sampatti? Sampatti is actually Dhan or Shakti or Samarthya, which means that we have both the Daivi as well as the Asuri Shakti, Dhan, Sampat. And what is it which we are going to actually encash? We have both the Dhan. What do we encash in this world? Our Daivi side, that is our virtuous side with all the virtues, or the Asuri side, the evil side. So we may say, oh, evil. No, I am not evil. But that's not true. There is a whole submerged, subconscious mind which operates when we are least looking at it, and in situations where there is great provocation and when we are not aware. And then we say, oh, I don't know where that reaction came from. It came from the subconscious. And how did they let it happen? Because I was not watching, because I was not aware, because I was not silent or steady enough to watch myself. Simple. So there is a great deal, and let us not be deluded that there is a black and white. No, both these arrive and are seated in us at the same time. Just like Duryodhana and Arjun were seated at the same time in the chamber of Krishna, saying, we need your help. So, what are these virtues? There are 26 virtues that have been talked about so far. And some of them are, we'll look at some of the last ones. In verse number 3 and 4. Tejak Shama Dhriti Shaucham Adroho Natimanita. Natimanita, an exaggerated sense of honor and pride and position. Exaggerating for ourselves. The world may think, oh, it's okay. This position or power or wealth or jagir that we have is your earning, okay, but we have an exaggerated sense of pride. And if we don't have that, then Bhagavan says that is your Natimanita. That means you are humble and modest and not giving too much importance to your own achievements. So be Natimanita. Bhavanti Sampad Daivim. These are your Sampatti, which are Daivi Sampatti. Teja, vigor, forgiveness, Dhriti, of course, steadiness and forbearance and purity. So in chapter 16, verse number 3, we have seen all this. Abhijatasya Bharata. So, a well-born Arjun, hear this from me. And in the 4th verse, Bhagavan says, Dambho Darpo Bhimanascha. Abhiman, conceit, arrogance, hypocrisy, a sense of display of one's so-called virtues or wealth or achievements or beauty or whatever. That kind of an unholy display. We do that normally on media with Facebook and stuff, so that we get a maximum number of likes and approval. Are we looking for approval? Why is there a display? Or are we doing things for our own growth? Whatever it is. But a sense of display drives us into dambha, darpa. And akrodha. So krodha is also one of the things that never expressed without harming the person who is expressing the anger. It harms the person most. Parushasyam, harshness of words, which comes from krodha. We saw all this. Ajnanam cha bijatasya. Verse number 4. All this arises from ignorance. The moment we know that मैं सदा नहीं रहने वाला हूँ, मेरी जो ये धन संपत्ति, जायदाद, जमीन, मान, प्रतिष्ठा, सम्मान, whatever it is, ये भी सदा नहीं रहने वाला है. ये इसकी प्रकृति में इसका नियम है ही नहीं. There is no such law in Prakriti no matter how much we may desire its permanence and our own continued existence forever, our desire doesn't make it permanent. It is still impermanent. The moment we realize this, when we say, oh, I am dwelling in asat all the time, then we draw away from asat into sat, and that becomes our gyan. So Bhagavan says, your agyan is leading you into all kinds of asuri pravritti, asuri, evil, diabolical characteristics of your nature are coming to the fore actually. They are all there, but if we don't feed them and if we don't nourish them, they don't come to the fore. So, Chabetas, they are born out of agyan, Bhagavan says. Partha Sampada Masurim, these are all diabolical. Now, so going on to verse number 5, what is the effect of both these? We know that there are two paths, and Robert Frost had said that in the woods I saw two paths diverged in the woods, and I took the one less traveled. Okay, so it's a very oft quoted line, and it was also very close to Nehruji's heart. I think it was found in his diary, Robert Frost lines. There were two paths that diverged in the woods. There are always two paths. There's always a choice. I took the one less traveled. And you know how we have interpreted this Robert Frost line? So many people have interpreted it to mean that he took the path less traveled means he is courageous. He wants to try something that is unknown. He wants to try something that is path-breaking, trailblazing, and he has the courage to make a breakthrough. This is all modern corporate language. In fact, Robert Frost himself was quite distraught at the way it has been interpreted. So 2 years before his own death, Robert Frost said, may I please explain what I meant by those two lines? And then he said, see, when I said I took the path less traveled, doesn't mean I am getting into some kind of a mad adventure and to show my courage. It simply means the path which is taken by most people is not that of goodness and truth. When I see that, I want to take the path less traveled. That means very few people take the path of goodness and truth consciously. I will stick to this. And by goodness and truth, it encompasses everything. So hypocrisy and show of wealth or accumulation of wealth or all this accumulation and possessions that we hang on to, and our moha and our grief, all that comes into our sansari life. And Robert Frost said, no, this is not the life I want. And very few people stay away from this kind of material life and hanging on their happiness, hooking on their happiness and their joy on all the gratification of the senses. That's how we live in the Western, let's call it modern world. And therefore he said, I consciously choose the path less traveled because I reject the path of the one traversed most. A conscious rejection of the common path, which is the Asuri path, is what led him to choose the other path. So thank God Robert Frost had his fundamentals pretty clear, no matter how he had been interpreted. And Bhagwan Krishna is saying exactly the same thing to Arjun. He's saying, Arjun, heaven and hell are just concepts, they're symbolic. But taking a path of Asuri, that is the diabolical or the evil or the non-virtuous or the material or the sensuous, is a choice you make, and both these will lead you in different directions. So the lifespan is the same and your capacity is the same. Both Asuri as well as Daivik Sampatti, whatever I express myself as generosity or selfishness, or if I express myself through dan or through anger or through self-control, through dhamma, or through self-indulgence or through shama, restraint. In both these I am using whose energy? My own energy is being expended in the expression of both, which means both are being expressed by my very own consent. There's no third person coming and saying that, okay, I'll help you with Devi or Asuri pravritti. So my own energy is being used, same amount of energy being expended, lifespan is the same, I have been endowed with both, then what's the difference? The difference is the direction. The direction one chooses is going to lead us to a different manzil. That's what we don't realize. And therefore Bhagavan says that look, the direction is what you can choose. And the moment you do that, you have different results. What are the different results? Verse number 5. Daivi sampad vimokshaya nibandhaya surimata. Quite obvious. Daivi sampad will lead you to mokshaya, to moksha, to liberation, the divine nature. If we cultivate it, nourish our own divine side. Now by divinity, we are not talking about becoming Bhagwan or anything. These are very simple injunctions given by Bhagwan. Simple changes in life when he says, don't be selfish, have self-control, do not give expression to anger, shama dama, kshama, forgive easily, dhriti, forbearance, and achapalam. Achapalam, why be unsteady? Be steady, achapalam. Simple changes in life, Bhagwan is called Daivi, divine. And he says, yes, this is a path to your liberation. And what about Nibandhaya Surimata? Okay, so the other path will naturally lead you to, he doesn't say hell or heaven or Swarg. He says to your own Bandhan. Nibandhaya Asuri. Nibandha. Bandhan. Bandhan means, we all know by now that all these possessions which we think are ours and they belong to us and they give us a sense of identity and status and satisfaction and gratification are actually temporary, and the moment we hang on to them, nevertheless, we are actually binding ourselves not to those things but to our own chakra, Kal chakra of birth and rebirth. So the very obvious consequence, he's talking only of consequences now, saying very obvious consequences that you are binding yourself in rebirth, because you're going to be born with the same desires which you nourish and cherish right now. And there are too many desires, too many. In fact, in the second chapter, Krishna had said to Arjun that those who are engaged single-pointedly, that this is my goal, I may have lots of duties, there may be multifarious duties that I may conduct, but my mind is not branched out into fragmented or disintegrated into so many branches. It sits in all the feverish, frenzied activity, my mind still remains single-pointed. My mind meaning the one whose mind remains single-pointed, that yes, this is my goal, this is my nature, this is the nature of sansar, I am Atma, sansar is nashwar, इसमें इतनी बड़ी क्या बात है, उसको सिर्फ याद रखना है, स्मृति का प्रॉब्लम है, अगर हम स्मृति में रखे रहें, हमारा माइंड भी सिंगल पॉइंटेड होगा. So Bhagwan had said in the second chapter, 41st verse, व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धि एकेह कुरु नंदना. जो कर्मयोग करता रहता है उसका ध्यान उस कर्म में रहता है. जो ज्ञान की इच्छा रखता है, he is burning his desires and his agyan in the agni of gyan. Bahushakhayanantascha, and therefore he is not endlessly scattered. But the endlessly scattered mind is the one buddhayo vyavasayinam, the one who thinks that मेरी आशाएं, मेरी डिजायर्स, मेरे निश्चय, मेरे संकल्प इस दुनिया में हर एक चीजों में बंधे हुए हैं. That person is naturally scattered. So Bhagwan has said, achapalam bano. Achapalam. In this very 16th chapter he said. Now achapalam, not a very oft heard verse or word, not very often even quoted, but it did catch my imagination, because you see people around you who in the midst of frenzied activity and demands of society and the world still remain single pointed. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ek single pointed. How? So ordinary people, and I stand in awe of them. And they are not great people or sadhak or seekers or tapasvis. They are, one of them is a mechanic who mends my car. The other is a stationer who gives me all the stationery to write my notes. simple stationer. But I am in complete awe of these people. They must have done some tapasya in their previous lives, definitely. Because I see the manner, the bhava and the equanimity with which they conduct themselves. You go all frenzied and scattered about the condition of your car, and the way he looks at it, and the way he says, yes, it will be done. Okay, just wait for half an hour. I'll mend it. And quietly, not hurried or agitated or irritated, none of that. And there will be 2 or 3 people crowding around these people because they're all customers saying, my car, I want this first, I want that first. In the midst of the bazaar के बीच में जो समबुद्धि रख सकता है ना, I stand in complete awe of these people. And of course they serve everyone, and it gives us inspiration to say, हाँ ऐसा भी हो सकता है. And the least amount of disturbance to my desires, I wanted something my own way and it didn't happen, and the traffic was bad, and I see the quality of my own nature. It's agitated at the slightest, it just gets tipped. What is it that doesn't tip these people? And I'm saying again, they're not sadhakas, at least not in this life. So this mechanic who tends the car, by just watching him, or the stationer, he at least there's some glow, some stage in them that we can draw from, some inspiration. They are just points of inspiration, and they're ordinary people. So Bhagavan is saying such people will not bind themselves to life, nibandhaya, to repeated births, because maybe this is the tail end of their janma maran chakra, and therefore they are born, and we are all born actually, to finish off whatever leftover bundle of papas or sins we have had in our previous lives, and just finish it off. Finish it off how? Through suffering, naturally. So jitni suffering hoti ja rahi hai, we are finishing off all the sanchit karma of pap, that is the collection of previous lives. Therefore, maybe these people are born poor, they struggle with finances, they have bad health in the family, they struggle for education of children. These same people I am talking about. Yes, lot of suffering. But see the quality of their mind. That's what amazes me. And I think that's what Bhagavan meant when he said, in the midst of everything, can you just be achapalam? That will lead you closer to me. And that leads me to a story of, one is a true story, and the true story is about Sullenberger. You know the name of the pilot, a civilian pilot in the US in about 13 years back, in 2009. Both his engines failed in New York. You know about this incident, such a famous one. And he had just taken off from New York. His engines failed because they were bird hit, and not one but both engines, and he didn't have time to turn around. He didn't have enough height to turn around and land again in New York. So there is a recording from the black box. They took a recording, and it's there on YouTube today. You must hear it. He said to the air traffic control, both my engines are hit, and see the steadiness of his voice. The steadiness and quietness of his voice. And there was panic in the ATC, the air traffic control. And they said, all right, turn around. He said, no time for that. What are you going to do? I am landing in the Hudson River. I beg your pardon? ATC was spluttering in shock, saying what? Sorry, I didn't hear you. And then the connection was cut off. All that he said was, I am landing in the Hudson River. And there's a recording of that too. The steadiness of his voice in the midst of such impending tragedy. Of course, it didn't turn out to be a tragedy, but it was impending. What gives these people such a lot of dhairya, dhriti, steadiness? It's cultivated. We don't nourish it. Of course, you can say, okay, it is his training, and so the discipline of the mind is also our training, the training of the sadhaka in the normal, ordinary life. So, talking about ordinary life, there's the story of Vishnu, who used to maintain a record of all the people who had God, let's say the God principle or the truth in their minds. And naturally, there was this very conceited man called Narad, who used to dance about saying Narayana, Narayana. So his name was always on top of the list because he was chanting Narayan, Narayan. One fine day he looked at that list and his name was at the bottom. And he went to Vishnu in great rage and said, "What is this? I keep saying Narayan, Narayan and you put my name at the bottom. How?" So Vishnu Bhagwan said, "Okay, just do something. Take this bowl of oil which was filled right up to the brim." And he said, "Take this bowl and walk around the temple. एक प्रदक्षिणा करके आ जाओ. ये मंदिर की प्रदक्षिणा करके आ जाओ." And in South India, you have huge temples. So that pradakshina must have been at least half a kilometer. And Narad, of course, conceived that he had. He came back and he said, "Look, I haven't spilled one drop of oil." Vishnu said, "Wow, great. Kudos for that. But, oh, there is a but to it." He said, "Yes, but right through this pradakshina, you did not say Narayan even once." He said, "Oh." So Bhagwan said, "I have put some other people on the top of my list. Who are these people?" Now Narad was really curious. He said, "These are homemakers. These are women who look after their children and cook for the family and have so many engagements. These are homemakers, women who look after the home. How come?" Narad asked. Vishnu said, "You know, when the work gets too much for them and they are cooking and they're tending to the cleanliness and the health of the family and the needs of the extended family, if it's a extended family, they are chanting in their minds, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan." Why do they do that? To steady their mind. Because the demands are so much that the mind needs steadiness, not the work. The work still needs a steady pace of completion. But to steady their mind, they're doing their work with the name Narayan, Narayan, Narayan on their lips. So Vishnu said, "Look, their name is on top. This is the one way they are being achapalam, unagitated and not restless." What about us? Even when we don't have work, leave alone when in the midst of action, yes, we have a justification. "Arey, mujhe bahut kaam tha, and the traffic was bad and I had to get to someone." There are so many excuses. But even when we are quiet and we are not rushed, the mind is still not achapalam if we become aware. Why? Because then it is dwelling in the agitations of the past. पहले ऐसा क्यों हुआ, वो हुआ, फला हुआ, और the anxieties of the future. ऐसा हो जाए तो क्या हो जाएगा? जो होगा वो भगवान के हाथ में है. So anyway, you have to say Narayan, Narayan, I'll do my best right now. So he said, this is one way to steady your mind and become and have more and more Daivi qualities, not Asuri. Apayashunam. Apayashunam, of course, means non-crookedness. Non-crookedness, but you say, yeah, we are not crooked people. Yes, but then we still harbor a fragment of envy, a little bit of jealousy, some possessiveness, some greed for objects in the world. Maybe not for ourselves, but for our children and grandchildren and extended families. Whatever that covetousness, coveting of something in the world, that all has been bundled into not being straightforward. So, what about the child? Okay, so when a child is born, you will see that the child is totally not crooked. So therefore they say, oh, child is divine. But the thing is, he is not crooked because he is a clean slate and with agyan. At the same time, a sadhu, you will see a sadhu's face, and there is hardly ever any, as I said, agitation, because they know how to sit in the corner of a very noisy congregation and either take the help of a rosary, japmala, or without it. Even if you say Narayan, Narayan, your mind is already, they have a way, and they become non-crooked, not involved in the world. But that is out of Gyan. So, well, a child can be out of Agyan, non-crooked, and a sadhu will be out of Gyan. That means that Gyan which the sadhu or the sadhak or the seeker or the Gyani or the bhakta or the karma yogi, doesn't matter which route, or the dhyani, that steadiness which he has gained is actually his own sampat, and that is his dhan. That is the treasure, to be treasured actually. So So all the Daivi Sampat has been called our own treasure. But what do we call our treasure? Our bank balance and our Zameen Jaidad and our Naam, Man, Samman, achievement. That is what we are used to calling our Sampatti. That's the way normally society addresses it. But that doesn't take away from what Krishna is saying. Daivi Sampad Vimokshaya. Moksha, liberation, there is only one way. Duryodhan, when he landed at the chamber of Krishna, he hoped against hope that Arjun should not choose to take away Krishna's army, because Krishna said, okay, both of you are here. Of course, first he saw Arjun. And he said, since I've seen you, Arjun, why don't you choose whether you want me in the Mahabharata, that is in the Kurukshetra battle, or you want my army. And the name of Krishna's army was Narayani army. So Arjun chose, naturally, he chose Krishna. And Duryodhan said, wow, now I'm so lucky. This guy is such a fool. Arjun, he had a choice and he chose one. And I have such a huge army and he chose this one person. How is he going to win the battle? Anyway, he scoffed at him. Now, the question is, in the midst of the battle, that is in the midst of the battle of our own lives, when we are fighting so many battles, what is going to save Arjun or us? When Arjun was beset with grief and sorrow and confusion, what was it that could save him? The chariots, the horses, the bugles and the soldiers? No, only Gyan. So he had chosen rightly, because it's only Gyan that can pull us out of our confusion and grief, and that is our real trouble. Our real trouble is not financial trouble, social, psychological, everything, all this passes. Agama payino anityaha. Dukha, sukha, all situations pass. There's no situation that sticks to us permanently, be it the death of loved ones or the grieving that we express at their passing away, whatever tragedy. Everything happens first of all for a reason. Bhagwan knows that there are some things which are going to be snatched away from us, and we may complain and cry and thrash about and throw a tantrum. Why did God do this? He knows taking away that thing, snatching it, was good for us for some reason. We may see it later in life. We may not even see it in this life. We'll know it in the next life. Because there are some things which are not good for us and they are snatched away. And then we see, oh, ye kyun hua? Why am I separated or divorced, or my house burned down, or my parents passed away early? There's a reason for everything. Trust him. We don't know the reason. So that's why Krishna told Arjun, in this battle, trust me. I know what I am doing. These people whom you are facing are not going to be killed by you. You are nimitta, you are an instrument. I have done what needs to be done. I have decided their destiny. So also my destiny is decided by him. So is Arjun's destiny. So trust him. The Gyan is what pulled Arjun out of trouble, not the army. So the real trouble, when I have real existential trouble in life, कि मैं कौन हूँ? What is the purpose of my life? ये दुख, मुझे ऐसा क्यों लगता है कि ये चीजें दुख देती हैं, ये सुख देती हैं? My existential questions are not going to be answered by my bank balance, or my zameen, or jaidad, or my man pratishtha, or the number of likes I have on Facebook. Those answers I will not find. I will find it only in Gyan. So Arjun chose rightly when he said, because he could be pulled out only by a sarthi. When we choose the right, when we choose goodness or Devi, we are choosing to pull ourselves out of trouble. We are choosing, making a choice which will liberate us. Moksha ki or, Devi Sampadvi Mokshaya. And Duryodhan, no matter how much of greed and lust and hunger for power that he suffered from, did the army, even Krishna's army, Narayani army, could they save him? No. So when we choose our own bandhan, nibandhaya suri mata. One leads to bandhan, the other leads to liberation. It's quite obvious, isn't it? Mashacha sampadam daivim but don't grieve. Pandav, don't grieve. Why should he grieve? There's a reason. Because Bhagwan says, Abhijatosi Pandava. Abhijatosi Pandava. I know you are in shock thinking, I'm so full of bad qualities. I'm so full of evil. I'm so attached to the sansar. And there's grief and sorrow and so much agyan in me. Any listener will think that. Krishna is very clever. He says, I can understand, Arjun, that's what's going on in your mind. That's what's going on. That मैं तो अज्ञानी लगता हूँ ये सब में. हाँ, but Bhagwan says, don't ever grieve, because I have put the seed of Gyan also in you. It's up to you to nourish it. So, Ma Shicha Sampadam Daivim. Daivim is your Sampat also. Don't grieve. And you are the most deserving candidate for this Gyan. So, he is actually consoling him. और हमको अपनी गुण क्यों नहीं दिखाई देते? Like Arjun is saying, मैं तो अज्ञानी हूँ, मैं तो you have to give me ज्ञान. He must be also thinking. We can't see our virtues because it's like somebody gave an example of काजल. काजल हमारे आँखों में लगा हुआ होता है, लेकिन अपनी आँखों को नहीं दिखाई देता. स्वयं. We can't see ourselves, our own काजल. So we can say, अरे हमारे में तो कुछ गुण है ही नहीं. But we have to be assured by the words of Krishna saying, I have given you the seed of both. So हमारे पास होगा जरूर. Okay. And so do not despair. He says, Ma Shucha, do not despair, Arjun. Both these are with you. Now, modern psychology says that, that is modern psychology. I'm just quoting a bit of science. That whatever is sown as a seed deep in our antahakaran, in our early childhood, remains the seed which flowers later. So can you understand how critical it is for us to know all this through stories or through emulation, following the example of members in the family in early childhood. Later on in life, it's like a burnt seed which we are trying hard to sow, and then say, it's not sprouting. मैं ज्ञान की तरफ क्यों नहीं बढ़ रहा हूँ? So it's just an aside to say how important it is to sow the seeds early in life. Because what happens if we don't do that, then society takes over, schooling takes over, the world of economics and material progress takes over. And what are their messages? Their messages to the young mind is that, look, you have to get into competition, comparison, one-upmanship, climb the social ladder, climb the financial ladder, be mobile in the world. Mobile meaning move from place to place wherever you find your highest financial material gain, and also learn to display your wealth and your abilities. Otherwise people will think you are a मूर्ख. Display it, your प्रदर्शन करो अपने wealth का, अपने और outer achievements का, वो सब करो. These I know, they are not explicitly mentioned, but all these exist as subliminal messages in our education system, in our neighborhood, in our society. Subliminal meaning they are not mentioned, they are below the surface, but they are very clear messages to the antahkaran of the growing individual. And therefore we grow up with this thinking, ये तो normal है ना, I must compete, I must compare, I must possess, I must hoard, I must accumulate, because फिर मैं तो मूर्ख रह जाऊंगा, I'll be called impractical. These are messages we are getting because the other part, the Devi virtues, have not been implanted, let's call it implanted or embedded in us early enough. Now, when does change happen? Change will happen. We must still not despair, because the moment we see, like Robert Frost, oh, I have the ability, I have the power, I have the sampatti. It's only the direction which needs a change. What does direction mean? I can change direction only when I become aware कि where am I heading? मैं इनके पीछे जा रहा हूँ कि उनके पीछे जा रहा हूँ? एक साधक के पीछे, एक वैरागी, एक विवेकी के पीछे जा रहा हूँ. Am I inspired by someone who has vivek and vairag and steadiness? Or am I inspired by someone who is hoarding wealth and because of that excessive hoarding of wealth is getting onto the cover page of Forbes magazine? Whom am I admiring? That already tells us our system of virtues that we have. So becoming aware is the first step in changing our direction. What is going on in my antahakaran right now? Am I feeling a seed of a jealousy or pride or arrogance or krodh or envy or just simple agitation at things not moving my way because I desired and designed them a certain way without surrendering to God? So the more the stiffness that we have, resistance that I have, more will be the grief. The more the suppleness and surrender, the less the grief, because then Bhagwan knows what is right for me. He may even cut off a limb and say, okay, this is right for you. That's an extreme example, but it also means so much of papa is cut off. And the number of things that we lose in life, be assured that by losing them, there is something to be gained. It has been right for us, whether they are people or situations or objects or circumstances that we have lost, opportunities. Be assured, it was done big for a reason. And we may not see the reason now, we may see it after 10 lives, who cares? Krishna can see our entire panorama of thousands of our lives. And that's what he told him in 18th chapter. Arjun, I can see all your lives from beginning to end, like a panoramic view. So I know what's good for you. And I know in what way you are growing. You can see only this small, minuscule lifespan of 120 years. I mean, that was his lifespan. Nowadays, it's 80, 90, 100. Okay. So, the subconscious mind can take over if we are not aware. हम मूर्छा में जी रहे हैं. And we give way to instincts and impulses of anything, of greed or accumulation or anger or envy, whatever. And if it's not within the prakash of our awareness, that means we are operating in darkness, which means that it is in murcha, like sleepwalking through life or drunken walking through life. So, हम होश में जिए, यही उनकी इल्तिजा है कि होश में तो आए पहले. Then only you can change your direction. Then he says, I assure you liberation. पहले होश में आना तो तुम्हारा काम है पहले. उसके बाद liberation is my job. I'm going to give it to those who hold the Daivi Sampada. And Daivi Sampada, just a small reminder, what is this Daivi Sampada? It is that vigor to use our vigor and strength for the benefit, for the welfare of somebody else, not just for myself, not for my own gratification. And Kshama, when I have the power and I have the opportunity and I still don't take revenge, that is Kshama. And Dhriti, hold on. There are things that are happening which are not going my way. Dhriti, Dhairya. Bhagavan says these are your Devi Sampada. This is the Sampatti I have given you. Just discover it within yourself. And Shauch, of course, we had talked about cleanliness, as Shauch as cleanliness at length. And the cleanliness of your wealth. Wealth becomes Shuddha only when it is earned honestly and shared generously. It becomes a purification of our own hard-earned wealth. Otherwise, it's just wealth. It's just wealth. किसी के काम ना आने वाली. न किसी के आँख का नूर हूँ, न किसी के दिल का करार हूँ. क्या हूँ मैं? एक मुश्ते गुबार हूँ. This was Bahadur Shah Zafar at the end of his life, when he knew that he had wasted his life. Mushte gubar is actually a handful of dust. That's what we feel at the end of our life. I've done nothing, contributed nothing. Na kisi ke dil ka karar. I am mushte gubar, handful of dust. Anyway, body will become handful of dust. But why should our life become like that? Adroha. Why hold grudges and hatred? So lot of these Daivi Sampat, which is worth visiting over and over again in verses 2, 3 and 4, Bhagwan says, uske phal to jaan lo pehle. And phal is liberation. And if you are not heeding it and becoming Asuri, then Nibandhaya Suri. Nibandhaya Suri simply means that, of course, I'm going to be bound, but you know, there is something called an outer change And a person can say, yes, I am going to do all the righteous things, and I am going to do all the religious activities and righteous things and speak the truth, and outward action and outward behavior, a change of it is good, no doubt. But that's not enough. Bhagavan says, a change in your antahakaran is what will bring you mukti. So don't be deluded and say, भगवान मैंने तो देखो तुमको इतने सारे कोकोनट चढ़ाए थे, ये वाला मंदिर बनवाया था प्योर मार्बल राजस्थान से मंगा के, and then I set up a factory so that employment would be generated, and I have put up benches for old people, and I have, people do a lot of paramarth, no doubt. भगवान says ये सब परमार्थ से मैं खुश हूँ, but I cannot promise you mukti. I will give you sukha, I will give you happiness. सुख मैं दे सकता हूँ यहाँ तक, लेकिन ये आउटवर्ड काम जितना आप करेंगे मैं सुख दूंगा, लेकिन मुक्ति के लिए आई नीड वन मोर स्टेप, क्योंकि ये बाहर से ओढ़ा हुआ वर्च्यूज है. इट्स एन आउटर वेनियर ऑफ दैवी संपत, ऑफ डिविनिटी, आउटर वेनियर ऑफ द एक्शंस. तो ये ओढ़ो मत, इसको ओढ़ना नहीं है. अंतःकरण जब तुम्हारा बदल जाएगा ना, when there is true kshama and dhriti and forbearance and generosity, I will know it. I meaning Bhagwan will know it first, of course. And if we are aware of ourselves, if we live in awareness, if we live in the prakash, the light of awareness of our own antakaran, then we will also know it. When that changes, Bhagwan says, that is the seed which sprouts into Devi. And I have given you the seed. So you may do outer action. I'll give you sukh, I'll give you happiness, I'll give you wealth and prosperity, but mukti, change your antahkaran. So that real ahankar, if I may have, कि मैंने तो मंदिर बनाया, मैंने तो परमार्थ किया, मैंने फला डोनेशन किया, मैं तो झूठ कभी नहीं बोलता. Okay, that ahankar Bhagwan is watching. It is, it is subtle, but it is a psychological truth which Krishna has to mention to Arjun and to all of us. That outward and symbolic actions, they will create a kind of bhava in you, bhava. Lekin for total transformation, you need a nishchaya, a sankalpa, that yes, this is me, this is the real me. So, जब लोग कहते हैं ना कि अच्छा, you must go and have a dip in the Ganges and you will be cleansed of your sins. So, do you think it's all a foolish action? So, here we must remember that a person goes because he has heard from the Mahatmas that they must take a holy dip in the Ganges and be cleansed forever. He goes there with a bhava ki whatever bad things I have thought or done are going to be cleansed, and therefore I am not going to hold on to those bad thoughts and bad actions again in future, because Ganga is cleansing me. When he goes with that bhava, he comes out with a nischay, with a sankalpa, कि मैं फिर से नहीं अशुद्ध हो जाऊंगा with those bad thoughts. So what has happened? A bhav has turned into sankalp, and sankalp meaning a decision to transform. That changes the person's antahkaran. So yes, there is a subtle change happening, but if we do it mechanically and then we go and indulge in all kinds of things and say हमारे business में तो ऐसे ही चलता है भैया, without telling lies or without undercutting other people, I cannot do business, I cannot survive. Yes, but I had a dip in the Ganga and I'm fine. If it's done mechanically, careful. Nothing done mechanically is going to transform anything, either ourselves, our antakaran, or our destiny. Nothing will change. But yes, there are some simple folk who take these religious ritualistic actions quite literally, and therefore they may gain some satisfaction from it, definitely, and a sense of holiness, sense of feeling holy and clean, but not mukti, which is the first word Bhagwan says that in the first line, that I am going to give mukti to those who have Daivi Sampad Vimokshaya in the Antakaran, if they have real qualities. Now, how does freedom come? But I am doing so many different things. As a Karma Yogi, my freedom, my liberation will come from Nishkam Karma, because I am doing selfless action. What about the Jnani? The Jnani person, every time he reads a certain shloka or a verse or a thought from Krishna or the Vedas, is actually cleansing the mind or burning out the अज्ञान. तो उसको कहते हैं ज्ञानाग्नि, ज्ञान की अग्नि. ज्ञान की अग्नि में बारंबार वो बर्न करना चाहता है अपने अज्ञान को. And therefore the ज्ञानी also might get liberation through the agni of ज्ञान. कर्म योगी through the निष्ठा of selfless, निष्काम कर्म. And what about the भक्त? तो कहा गया है भक्त को तो स्वयं भगवान आके मोक्ष देंगे, उनको कहीं जाके लेना नहीं है. जैसे कर्म योगी को कर्म में लेना है, ज्ञान योगी को ज्ञान के पास जाना है, भक्त के पास स्वयं भगवान आएंगे और कहेंगे मोक्ष तेरा है. बिकॉज I'm talking of the supreme bhakti, okay, like Kabir and Meera and Surdas and Nanak. But still, even the first step is we take towards bhakti. We need to understand that bhakti is not a step where we say I am doing. मैं करता होता ही नहीं हूँ उसमें. भगवान himself steps down and says, here you are. You deserve liberation. If we have both the seeds, we have both the paths to choose from. How do we know that both exist in us? मुझे तो लगता है कि I have given way to anger, resentment, and I have wished people ill because they have been nasty to me, and then I have a justification उनकी nastiness की वजह से, and I really don't wish them to prosper, and if they do, there is a twinge of envy. And if somebody tells me about something wonderful that happened in their life, I nod my head, but I'm not really happy for them. I notice all this subtly, subtle things going on in my antakaran, and I say, really? Bhagwan has sown the seed of Daivi Sampat also in me? Yes, Bhagwan says there is a proof. The proof of it is that हम जितने ही अनित्य, that means temporary things में उलझते जाएं, मेरी इच्छा हमेशा नित्य की ओर रहती है. नित्य. That means I want permanence. Although I am involved in so much of impermanent vastu, vyakti, paristhiti, then I am involved in all things which are inert around me. You know, my car, my possessions, the objects, and all are inert. Even the bodies of people who are my family and my own body, which I identify so very much with. Jad. With all the inert things I identify, and yet मेरी इच्छा है ज्ञान की. इच्छा है कि नहीं?